Welcome back for another Superman comic a day, day 16, Action Comic Books number 15. Still not used to having to say a different number each day. It will get better. Superman on the High Seas. A story that eventually gives us what it promises, and will be kind of a theme for 2 or 3 issues as Superman seems to constantly be on the ocean. Superman on the High Seas is sort of a return to the low stakes stories that Superman kind of had at around like issues 7, 8, and 9, where he's like helping people. Like the main goal is he's trying to help people more than he is fighting mobsters, which I enjoy so much more than the mobster stories because he's actually doing good in the world, while in the mobster stories he's just kind of taking out mobsters to end up having to fight more mobsters in the next issue. It doesn't feel like he's really accomplishing anything. I mean, you can make that argument in any sort of superhero comic about fighting villains, but there's something specifically with Superman's power set and mobsters that really annoys me. And the fact he's making like no difference, and there seems to be like a huge amount of different mobsters every week. It really just feels repetitive, and he's not accomplishing anything. At least he stops like Lex Luthor from taking over the world if Luthor shows up often. This also kind of derails my whole belief that the Ultra Humanite story was leading to somewhere, as it is the first story since the Ultra Humanite was introduced 2 issues ago to not have the Ultra Humanite. Though it doesn't have to be in every issue. It's fine having a low stakes story. Superman is that type of character who likes to help. So right away we're introduced to Clark Kent talking to George Taylor, not Perry White yet. Still at the Daily Star, not the Daily Planet. George Taylor wants Superman to go to Kidstown, which is not like a town run by kids, as you're kind of hoping by that name, but an actual like youth center. He goes and interviews the head of Kidstown, where he finds out that Kidstown is in debt $2 million and will have to close soon if they do not pay off that money. $2 million in today's money would be about $39 million. So this man is very in debt. Also, Kidstown doesn't seem to be actually doing anything. We only really see a shot of like kids outside not really doing anything. It's a very blurry shot. The kids aren't very detailed. It's almost like they're in a scrimmage, but like there's 3 of them and they're nowhere near each other. My first thought when we got to the story, because I didn't read the title Superman on the High Seas because it's in the description to the issue and not in the actual issue, was that this place was going to turn out to be corrupt and Superman was going to have to save these kids from being in slave labor or any of the other things that we eventually get when we get into Superman taking down evil orphanages. Clark leaves the place. He's a little dejected. We get a reveal that he still has $1 million from the Black Gold oil well. Remember that issue where he ended with $1 million? And if you're like me, I kind of assumed he split that with the other victims. Though I guess he saw that because he had already paid them what they had already paid, he didn't have to do that. I don't know, I didn't expect Clark Kent to be still a millionaire by this story. And hey, that's actually some sort of continuity. I did not expect that. There hasn't really been any continuity so far other than characters recurring. Hell, the last story was called Superman Meets the Ultra Humanite when he met the Ultra Humanite an issue earlier. I don't know what I'm ranting about. So to save Kidstown, he needs $1 more million. You know, fairly easy to get. Like, who can't get $1 million in a few hours? Or days. Actually, there is no time component to this. While he happens to be walking around, Clark ends up stopping a bank robbery and is given $5,000 for his troubles. Funny enough, when he actually needs money, people start paying him for his services. No one ever offered Superman any money before, and he's not actually Superman yet. He kind of does this as Clark. There's also this interesting moment where Superman claims that he eats bullets for breakfast. I bring it up because he hasn't actually been all that quippy in these stories. Jerry Siegel doesn't write him quippy, and what we'll eventually get is like an inconsistency by story of how quippy Superman is, which always makes me suspicious that Jerry Siegel wasn't writing all these. It doesn't make sense why Siegel would write him to be quippy and funny in one issue and then just have him be stoic and not really talking in the next issue. Like, it's quite a shift. He also runs into a man who has a tree collapse on him and saves him, and he's offered more money. Once again, the universe just starts throwing money at Superman. Back at his day job, he has to go interview an explorer where he finds out about lost treasure in a sunken ship. The universe is throwing money at him. So yeah, this famous explorer, Warren Kenyon, explains that there's a lost Spanish galleon somewhere in the seas that would have treasure equaling something like $1 million. Oh hey, that's exactly what he needs. Clark takes a 2-week vacation where he charters a ship. I'm guessing he He made about $15,000 that day just walking around saving people, so I'm guessing the $15,000 went to chartering the ship. But thanks to the Explorer story, people know about the Spanish galleon and that Clark is going to go look for the gold. So two separate factions of mobsters decide to go after the gold. One faction knock out the crew of the ship that Clark has chartered to pose as that crew. The other crew has a submarine. Actually, come to think of it, I believe they hijacked the submarine. You would have to fight soldiers to get a submarine. No one else is going to have a submarine except for the Navy. Once in the area, Clark takes out a diving bell. When the diving bell is under, the mobsters cut the tubes giving him oxygen, expecting this to easily kill Clark. Though how did they plan to get the treasure? In fact, they don't even really do much in this time. Clark just punches his way out of the diving bell because, yeah, that makes sense. And he becomes Superman. You know, Superman, bright blue costume, red cape, Superman. And this is where we get what is nearly the most interesting moment of this comic. Superman fighting a shark. Well, several sharks. Sadly, it's only like 3 to 4 panels and we get more of a description than actually seeing the shark attack him. That's just how Siegel wrote these comics. Sometimes if he has time for it, we get more panels that give us the action. But if he doesn't have the time, we're just going to have like very condensed panels and a narration making up for it. And it does not make up for it. The sharks eventually give up because they find out they can't penetrate his skin. I mean, it's an unfair fight, but it's still Superman versus sharks. This is where the submarine comes to attack him. It doesn't seem to shoot a bursting shell at him, so it can't do anything to him. You'd think a submarine would have something like that. Superman just breaks the hell out of this submarine, sending it to the surface, taking care of it fairly easily. You know, I say that a lot, but he takes care of things fairly easily. This is the fun of the comic. It is a power fantasy. He is destroying things that would take an army to fight by himself and barely breaking a sweat. I don't know how damaged the submarine is. We don't actually see it all that damaged, but once he throws it up to be surfaced, it doesn't show up again. Changing back into Clark, he brings the treasure up with him. The mobsters are very surprised to see him alive. On the deck, Clark notices that his diving bell was cut and is now suspicious of the crew. Wait, he didn't know something was up when he wasn't getting oxygen and the diving bell was just falling and he was locked in there? Sometimes Superman's surprisingly stupid. Or naive. While the ship is returning, Clark is sleeping, and one of the mobsters walks into his room and pulls a knife to stab him. The knife, of course, breaks on his chest. This is where he beats up the crew, who should be able to figure out who he is at this point, though I don't think he chartered the ship as Clark. He never wears his glasses. So I guess the mobsters don't know who he is. His secret is safe. He's just a guy who looks like Superman dressed like a sailor. You know, there's probably a whole lot of people who look like that right now in this art style. Back on shore, he is able to turn over the treasure and Kidstown is saved. We don't get much of a celebration to that, just Kidstown is saved. Whatever those kids were doing out in that lawn, they can continue to do. Though I don't see how this guy's not going to end up in massive debt again. I don't know how he got in debt in the first place, so this might not actually be a solution. Oh, and I forgot one thing. This is like the first issue in like 5 issues that Lois Lane returns. She shows up for like a second, only to complain about how jealous she is that Clark gets to go on a vacation. I mean, it's not even worth bringing up other than she hasn't shown up in a while. So it's not really the seafaring adventure you kind of want from a Superman story. He's barely out at sea and he spends like half the issue finding out about the treasure. But there is like 100 years worth of stories to have an actual great seafaring adventure for Superman. And that's all I really have left to say about Action Comics number 15, Superman on the High Seas. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications when a new video comes up. I do this Monday through Friday. Fridays are now Bat Fridays as I cover Detective Comics and Batman comics in the same way I'm covering Action Comics and Superman comics. So from Superman Comic a Day, talk to you guys tomorrow.